Since it seems like my YouTube inbox is nothing but people asking me to make more small engine related videos, I thought I'd make a couple videos of some small engines. These are two lawnmowers that I picked up off of the curbside when I was out for a walk with my dog. They're both probably mid-2000s MTD push mowers. This one here is a Yard Machines 4.5 horsepower 21-inch cut, rear bag and mulch. It looks like an older model because this here is still made of metal. They hadn't switched to the plastic one yet. That seems kind of rusted. As it says, it's got a 4.5 horse Briggs and Stratton on it. It's got no spark plug, as you can see. The deck has a bunch of oil on it, and the pull start, it just doesn't catch at all. Oh, and it's missing the air filter, as you can see. But the mower itself seems to be in pretty good condition. It's not rusty or anything. So we'll see how that one is. Next up over here is one of these absolute bare bones, you know, bottom end of the bottom end. Little MTD 20-inch, you can see. It's got a 4.5 horse, 4.5 foot-pounds of torque, 148 cc. So that's about a 3.5 horsepower engine on there. These are the kind with the non-adjustable wheels on it. No discharge cover. Yeah, very, very bare bones lawnmower. Non-adjustable handle. Feels like it's made out of cardboard. This one seems to actually have fine compression on it. And yeah, it's got good compression. So I noticed here there's soot all over the deck. You can see they've tried to put screws into the muffler to stop the soot. You can't make this stuff up, kids. This soot tells me that the diaphragm in the carburetor here is probably bad and the machine's running really rich. So we probably either at the very least need to reseat the diaphragm in the carburetor, but we probably need a new one. I'll start with this little red 20-inch here because it seems to be the most likely to just start right up. It's completely out of fuel, so as you can see, if the camera wants to focus there, it doesn't really. I put some fuel in it, so I'll set the camera up here and we'll see if it wants to start. Alright, I clamped down the handle. I'll give it a prime, or two. These engines don't typically need a lot, and we'll see if it starts. Well, let's turn that off before the blade flies off. I think we've got a loose blade or possibly a bent crankshaft. And yes, definitely flooding all over the deck. You can see it's just soot like crazy, so that's definitely going to need a carburetor diaphragm. Well, looking underneath the mower, as you can see, the blade is very loose. So I think I'll tighten it up and see if it runs any better. Alright, let's do a take two. I tighten the blade up. Let's clamp this back down. This handle is really something's not so great about that. We'll see if it starts here. That certainly runs a little better, although it definitely needs a carburetor diaphragm, at least reseated in there, if not replaced. I also noticed due to that blade being loose, it's loosened to the carburetor. Up here you can see the carburetor's not sitting fully onto the intake pipe there, and other stuff is loose like the wheels and this handle, and the pull start fell out of the little holder on there. So I'll get to taking the carburetor apart, and I'll show you that. Okay, I have the carburetor and gas tank taken off of the engine, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but the carburetor bolts aren't even screwed all the way into the gas tank. They're just kind of loose on there. So I think what happened is that the blade, maybe they hit something, or maybe it just loosened up over time. The blade gets off center, it starts shaking the whole thing, and it vibrates the carburetor off of the gas tank, causing either an air leak or a fuel leak, and that's why it's running so badly. So we're going to just try to take this off, reseat the diaphragm, and put it back together again and see how it runs. I thought I'd show anyone who's never seen one of these before. This is a Briggs & Stratton Pulsa Prime carburetor. They're most commonly found on these little 2.5, 3 horsepower engines here, like this and like that. They're completely made of plastic, and they bolt onto this milled aluminum gas tank here. So part of the carburetor is actually this. There's a bit of dirt in this one. But this is actually the bottom part of the carburetor, is the top of the gas tank, essentially. And then the top of the carburetor is this molded piece of plastic. And it's all sandwiched together around this neoprene diaphragm and a little gasket in there as well. Now what happens to these diaphragms, and this one doesn't seem to have had it happen to it, is over time these diaphragms warp, and they develop little like ripples in this part here, where it meshes with either the carburetor or it meshes with some other little channel in here, and it allows either air to be sucked in the side or for fuel to get between. For example, this is where the fuel comes up for the fuel filter. It allows that to get between here and the fuel pump side, which is this little like valley there, and that either floods the engine or makes the engine run way too lean. And that's why these engines are commonly seen, as this one is, belching black smoke and revving up and down and up and down. It's a pretty simple fix. This diaphragm's about, I don't know, $2 or something. But in this case, I think we can just sort of flatten it back out again and it'll work perfectly fine. Okay, so I wanted to point this out just for anybody who's curious. This engine here was made in China. And I can tell that without trying to find some place where it actually says made in China on it. There's 2 ways you can tell. The first way is look at these ribs here on this base plate. I guess this is the oil sump. If it has these ribs sort of cast into it, these little depressions, that's an indicator. Also, if it has ridges cast into the back of the crankcase here, it was most definitely made in China. Alright, so I've got the little carburetor back on, so I'll prime it up here, and we'll see if it starts. Well, it actually seems to run pretty well, albeit a little bit fast. I think I need to adjust some of the springs in here. I just noticed you can see some smoke here coming off of the engine. I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera. So I might take this off and make sure there isn't a mouse nest underneath this cooling shroud. That would also explain why it was running fast if the air vane governor cannot operate properly. Well, I've taken the shroud off here. And this engine's really clean underneath, actually. There's hardly any dirt or debris at all. This is the air vane governor. Air blows from this fan here, which also cools the engine. And it blows this vane back and forth, which, as you can see, moves the butterfly on the carburetor, which causes the engine to run faster or slower. So basically how it works is that when the engine runs faster, more air is blown off the flywheel, which causes the air vane governor to move this way, thus slowing the engine down, which in turn reduces the air, causing the air vane governor to move back, and it just sort of regulates back and forth, keeping a happy medium between, you know, right in the middle of where it should be. I can see that this spring here, though, this little one, is a little bit tight. That doesn't really need to be quite that tight. That needs to be a little bit looser. So I'll just stretch that out a little bit, and then it should run great. Oh, and I have to remove all the weird screws off of the muffler. I'm not really entirely sure what they were trying to achieve by filling the muffler with screws. I assume it was to get the lawnmower to stop blowing smoke. But then again, these are probably the same kind of people who bring me electric lawnmowers to get the oil changed. Okay, so we're pretty much finished. got a couple of things left I'm going to do to it. First thing, I need to tighten up that slightly janky handle. And secondly, I'm going to get my power washer out of the basement and just power wash some of the soot and oil off the deck. I don't even need to change the oil on it. The oil in it's perfectly clean, just a little low. I need to top that up. So I'll go ahead and give you a final start and show you how it runs. The next one we're going to look at here is this black one. It's a Yard Machines 4.5 horsepower 20-inch cut. Claims it's a rear bagger, but I don't have the bag. It's kind of covered in cobwebs here. A lot of spider eggs on it. That's kind of gross. People are scared of spiders. I'm not scared of spiders. It's missing the spark plug here, but you can see somebody broke the casting on the front of it trying to get the spark plug out. But this one actually looks in practically mint condition. I don't know if you can tell this, but all the paint is still on the engine. Everything looks really clean on it. The wheels still have very good tread on them. The deck has no rust. I mean, it's a bit covered in oil, but it's actually in very nice shape. And the crankshaft on this one isn't bent either. So the first thing I need to look at is why this pull start here isn't actually catching on the flywheel. I'm assuming there's something wrong with the recoil assembly, so I'll take this plastic cover off, and then we'll take the metal recoil cover off, and we'll see what's wrong with it. So I'll demonstrate how this system actually works. There are two little plastic pins in here that have a little bump on the top of them, and this cap here has some little, like, indents in it where they ride. So if I put this on, like this, and then I twist it, you can see it makes the little plastic pins just fly out like that. And that's how it engages when you pull the string. So I'll demonstrate how this system actually works. There are two little plastic pins in here that have a little bump on the top of them. And this cap here has some little, like, indents in it where they ride. So if I put this on, like this, and then I twist it, you can see it makes the little plastic pins just fly out like that. And that's how it engages when you pull the string. This engine here was made in 2001, and you can tell it's older because instead of having the air vane, it actually has a proper flyweight governor inside the engine. You can see how this linkage here runs back, and it runs behind this plastic or metal box here and into the engine. And they switched from the proper flyweighted governor to the air vane because, well, an air vane governor is just cheaper to produce. Well, now that I fixed the pull start, I'm going to put a spark plug in this and put some gas in it and see if it wants to start. Alright, I have put some gas in it. I'll prime it a couple times here. That should be good, and we'll see if it wants to start. Well, that actually runs pretty well. However, I can see there's fuel leaking out of the carburetor right there in the same basic location that it was leaking out on the red mower. So that leads me to assume that this carburetor has also loosened itself up and detached itself from the fuel tank, and that's what's causing the weird surging in the engine. Alright, well, I've taken the carburetor off, and you can see, just like the last one, these screws here are loose. I'll see if I can get the camera to focus on that. You can see there's a gap here, and I can actually move the little snap ring thing around with my fingers. So I'll take this off, make sure the diaphragm isn't messed up, and put it back together again. Okay, so this one's all pretty much mechanically finished. I stole the air filter off of the red one for the time being, but I'll go and prime it up here. I still have to wash it, obviously, it's filthy, but I'll start it up, and you can hear it run. I just tightened the carburetor up and the surging all went away, so... Now it is vibrating a little bit. I think the blade might be slightly bent or have some big dents in it. So I'll either sharpen up the blade or just put a new blade on it and order an air filter, because I didn't have one. This one here, as I mentioned, I stole it off the red one. So that cleaned up and should sell pretty well. So this is the little red 20-inch MTD. The mower is actually from 2007, I discovered. I cleaned it all up, as you can see. Most notably, I power washed and scrubbed the crap out of the deck, removing all of the oil and filth and copious amounts of soot. I also tightened up the wheels, the handles, sharpened the blade, and just gave the whole mower a general tightening and cleaning off. It runs pretty well, and it mows really nicely for such a cheap little disposable lawnmower. Now this black MTD 4.5 horse rear bag and mulching mower, this thing cleaned up fantastically well. I can't believe how nicely the deck just polished up on it, which is funny because I didn't even polish it. I just washed it off with the power washer and a little bit of soap, and the thing looks like it's brand new. The engine runs fairly well, and it cuts pretty nicely. I actually have already sold both of these mowers. I'm making this video about a week after repairing them. They sold in the first 2 days after I fixed them, I believe. I sold one the day I fixed it, and I sold one the next day. For those curious, I sold them for $200 each. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.